Let's get back to existing game, World of Warcraft. As we saw earlier, there were some students from the Utrecht University who researched EVE Online. The other students had to do some research on World of Warcraft and compare a little bit with the IBM research. If you could click. If you still don't know, World of Warcraft is a MMORPG. We saw earlier that there were 8 million players, but at this time it's 10 million plus subscriptions, and with 2.5 million alone in Europe. Where are we? Okay, yeah, World of Warcraft, as you saw earlier in the examples, it's a fantasy world with trolls, elves, and dwarves. We saw what IBM research, what the main points were from IBM, and we saw what their conclusions were. The conclusions were that leadership happens fast, encourages risk-taking, promotes temporary leadership roles, and gives opportunity to practice leadership. So leadership is dynamic, organic, and vastly changing. Go to the next slide. But we have to make a categorization in the way you can play World of Warcraft. You can play on different servers. Blizzard calls these realms. You can play player versus player, PvP. So you're mostly dueling against each other, one-on-one, 2 or 2, or with total groups of 40 people against 40 people. You can play persons versus environment. Then you play against non-playing characters. And you can role play. And this is the interesting part. You can go on. When I started with the game, I was just wandering around town. I sat in a bar, and at a certain point, I was listening to a conversation of 2 gnomish players. At a certain point, they started making fun of me. Being a night elf, you've got long, big ears. You're one of the tallest characters in the world. But after a while, after we spoke a bit, they ended talking about the gnomish relationships and the problems they have with it. And another example of how role-playing can be totally different from PvE or PvP play. You see 2 night elves on the screen. These are actually tourists. They were figuring out where to go that night, what to visit that night, and they were showing each other maps. They dressed on nicely, and they wanted to go to the cathedral. You can go on. After the examples, you have also to look at the different races and classes who can be chosen in the game. Every class has its specific abilities and has different solutions paths. If you choose to be a warrior, you will mostly be tanking. That means that you, in a combat situation, are the first to attack a monster and try to hold on to that monster, that it stays with you, and you take as much damage as you can take. Other specific abilities are healing, so you can heal yourself or heal other players. And another one is damage control, where you can damage a monster from a distance and not trying to pull that monster to you, but letting it with the main tank. Okay. So there are different kinds of play on World of Warcraft. You can play individually or with a group, and you can play instrumentally or in a role-playing kind of way. Dungeons can be done with 2 to 6 people. Raids can be done up to 25 people. Guild play, you can see that you come together with the guild you are in and start playing whatever it is, a dungeon, a raid, or just wandering around the world. And you can play certain storylines who are brought up by Blizzard, so the stories of the Night Elves, the Dwarves, but there are also storylines who are, how do you say it, the storylines who are made up by other players. When you take a look at all this kind of different play, you can make a double axe with individual and group play on the different parts, and instrumental play versus a role play, and you can put this kind of plays in it. So you see a quest, you can do it on your own with 2 guys, a raid with many guys, a guild which goes more to group play, but you can put it in instrumental play when you're doing a raid. But when you're more doing a storyline or celebrating a wedding, for example, you get more to the role-playing part. So we have seen that while playing World of Warcraft, you have to consider and you have to take a good look at what you are playing, in which kind of way you're playing, and which how do you say it? Which choices you make in advance. These choices can be very important later on in the game, and very important when researching on leadership. I have 2 other students who have got their own presentations, and the first one is Susan de Bond, who will talk about gender in World of Warcraft. Thank you.
Well, good evening. I'm Suzanne, and I did my research on gender, the representation of gender. The virtual world has captured the interest of today's business world, and several similarities have been found between leadership in virtual worlds and traditional leaderships. Well, we all know that in the real world there are more men in leadership positions than women. And I found it strange that in the report done by IBM and Seriosity, no attention was paid to gender. Also, Blizzard Entertainment does not pay any attention to gender. When looking at forums and blogs, I found a lot of quotes like, "Most men, boys, and even other females do not like taking orders from a woman." This suggests that there is, in fact, that gender is in fact an issue. In the official World of Warcraft character guide, they explain a lot about races, class, and what it means if you choose a certain profession. And this, in fact, is the only mention of gender in the whole game guide. That's not a lot. This led to my research question. Does the gender of a player's visual representative affect the possibility of attaining a leadership position in World of Warcraft? The World of Warcraft Wikipedia states that there are no differences in gameplay, and that the only differences are appearance, animation, and speech. Appearance. There are 2 kinds of appearance. The body, that is, the male avatars all look taller, they're very broad and very muscular, and the females are smaller, they're very slender and curvy. So a male mage is still more muscular than a female warrior. You also have the armor or the gear that your avatar can wear, and the same gear or same armor can look different on a male and a female. These avatars wear the same armor. It's called the Warrior's Embrace. Well, we all see the difference. I think the female looks a lot less protected, although it's not in real. Yeah. You also have animation. Animation is the movements the avatar makes, and you also have emotes, animated emotes. You can give your character commands. For example, dance is a command that you can give to your avatar, and your avatar will act this out. Well, this picture is a picture of the night elf dance. It's kind of like a stripper dance. They're all very sexual and very, yeah, it's not at all like the male dances. You also have speech. Another way for the avatars to communicate with each other is through voice emotes. It works the same. You just give the character, the avatar, a command, and they will speak it out loud. The male voice emotes are more commanding than the female emotes. And there's been a lot of commotion about the jokes you can make, your avatar can make. For example, the female joke is for a human, I believe, why does everybody assume that I know tailoring and cooking? So it's very gendered. Yeah. So I did a case study in World of Warcraft. I made a male and a female avatar, and they were both on the same faction, same server, same class, same race. So I would get the least differences between them. I did it on a player versus environment server, because on a PvP server, it's a lot harder to make groups and to have contact with the others, because it's everyone for himself. And on a role-playing server, you have the extra addition of roleplay, which could affect the outcome. I chose night elves, because night elves, they really look a lot different, the males and the females. And the druids, I chose them because with a druid you can choose what kind of play you want. You can be a tank, you can be a healer, so it's the least gendered of them all. These are my characters. Well, the male's larger. The results, well, they're a bit boldly stated. I found that my male avatar, I must say that I did it on a rather low level. Both my characters are now level 20, so maybe it's different when they're high level. But my male, he was challenged a lot of times, challenged for duels. He was asked a lot of time to group or to do a dungeon. And the female, she was helped a lot of times. When I was attacking a monster, I suddenly got someone who came to the rescue of the female and helped in killing the animal. I got a lot of buffs. That's when somebody throws a protection on you unasked. I got advice on how to play the game, which I already knew, but okay. So I found that the males, they were seen as a rival, and they were thus seen as equals. And the females, they were seen as being in need of help and not as an equal. So it was a lot harder to group for the female and to team up with others. It was very strange for me that people were willing to help my female avatar, but not team up with her. Yeah. So going back to the appearances, the human bodies are exaggerated and idealized, the standard being the Western idea of beauty. That's, this is so for a lot of representation in all media. Both the males and females are stereotyped, but the accent are put on other traits. For the males, it's strength, power, and attractiveness, and attractiveness is based on strength and power. And for the females, the points most exaggerated are beauty, size and physique, and sexuality, which is based on beauty and size and physique. So I found that the stereotypes found in male representations are more fitted for leadership positions than those found in the female representations, which led to my conclusion that differences in representation affect attaining leadership positions, and gender is unjustly an overlooked topic by IBM and Blizzard. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Pauline van der Steen, and I will present you my paper on role-playing leadership. In the past few weeks, I've been conducting research on the ways in which we can learn about the role of the leader in a corporate environment by observing and playing World of Warcraft. I did so by doing a literature study as well as playing research, which resulted in my ethnographic analysis. Here you can see my character. It's Zoli, a warlock gnome. As in research by Thomas Malone and Byron Reeves has pointed out, corporate environments and MMORPGs show some remarkable resemblances. I quote Reeves and Malone: "We know that business is becoming increasingly global. We know that enterprises are increasingly distributed, faster paced, and fiercely competitive. And we know that more work will be conducted virtually using technology to bridge previously impassable communication gaps." Well, indeed, these characteristics are all present in World of Warcraft. as are that both work and gameplay are social and collaborative. Reeves and Malone then proceed to, they propose MMORPGs as an environment in which we can learn about leadership and we can develop leadership skills. I think a few problems arise here. Well, transfer, we already talked about that quite a bit today, so I will not pay much attention to that. Also, I find that Reeves and Malone are focusing on one particular kind of player, and that is the achiever. But in World of Warcraft, there are also different types of players. Some players, for example, just play the game because they want to socialize with other players. Then there's something else. They take leadership skills and appropriate environment as things that constitute leadership. Well, I argue that there is a difference between behaving and doing. And my claim is that in order to be a good leader, you also need to be able to play the role of the leader well. This notion is supported by the work of Irving Goffman, an American sociologist. He has stated that we play different roles in everyday life and that we, we act differently according to different situations. So in my research, I therefore been focusing on roleplay, and I observed a group of players, myself being one of them, in a specific event in World of Warcraft, a dungeon. And while playing this dungeon, I focused on 3 important role characteristics, which I think are the most important for a role of the leader to be constituted. Self versus other roles and reciprocity, role embracement, and role distance. I feel that it's important to fulfill the role of the leader properly as well, because if you have really good leadership skills, but you are not able to present yourself as a leader and take on the role of the leader, those leadership skills will not come into being. Let's focus on self versus other roles and reciprocity first. This idea means that your role can only be constituted towards another role. So there's always the interaction between 2 or more people. In this interaction, there is a need for reciprocity, which means that both the people or all the people in the interaction need to acknowledge each other's roles. In World of Warcraft, this is important as well. When we take it back to leadership, the leader in World of Warcraft can only constitute his role of the leader with the role of the follower opposing him. And also the leader and the follower in this case need to acknowledge each other's roles in this. So this is a dynamic relation not only between the self role and the other role. There's also a dynamic relation between the self and the role one plays. These are the 2 next points, role embracement and role distance. First I will turn to role embracement. Role embracement is in the way in which a person, a player, really incorporates the role. He needs to embrace his role in order to present himself convincingly. And Irving Goffman put it as this, and I quote, "To embrace a role is to disappear completely in the virtual self available to the situation." Important for embracing a role is actively engaging in activities confirming this role as well attachment to the role. I found that it is really important in World of Warcraft as well. In one particular case, I started a dungeon with 2 other players, one of them presenting himself as the leader. And after about 20 minutes of playing, the leader just quit with a quick, "I don't want to play no more, see ya." And he got himself killed in the dungeon and went off. The other player now, we were left with the 2 of us, so we could not proceed in the dungeon, and we were forced to quit as well. Well, it's kind of obvious that the leader in this case did not embrace his role. He was not attached to his role, and he quit that very activity that made him the leader and that confirmed his role as a leader. There is another dynamic between the self and the role of the self, that is role distance. This 3rd characteristic means that the person who plays the role also knows that he's playing that role and can reflect on one's own behavior by doing so. So it's pretty important to know that you are you're aware of the fact how you present yourself. Also, role distance is important for avoiding over-involvement, especially in, for example, in corporate environment. Over-involvement can result in stress or psychological problems. It was quite hard to distinguish role distance in World of Warcraft, especially because I was focusing on a leader who was just a leader for quite a short term. But I encountered a form of role distance when I was playing a dungeon again, this time with a bit of a larger group. And I was the only person or the only player in the group who did not know the other players yet, and all the other players knew each other already. The leader, he really presented himself towards me as being the leader, giving me advice and directions, while towards the other players, he did not present himself as much as a leader. He was more joking around. This shows that he was aware of the fact that he had to present himself as the leader towards me. Before I proceed to my conclusion, I want to point out that I've found several forms of leadership in World of Warcraft. First, I encountered short-term leaders and long-term leaders. Short-term leaders, for example, being the leaders of a group quest or a dungeon, and the long-term leaders, the leaders of a guild. Also, I encountered formal leaders and informal leaders. Formal leaders being elected or appointed by others, and informal leaders more or less emerging or just taking on the leadership position themselves actively. Also, I've found that in World of Warcraft, most of the time, short-term and informal leaders go together, as well do long-term leaders and formal leaders. So, I found out in my research that all three role characteristics are more or less present in World of Warcraft and important. This means that playing a role in this specific online distributed environment is important. The specific case in which the leader left the group shows that role embracement is important and poses a question. Did he leave the group because he thought of World of Warcraft as just a game? Or did he leave the group because short-term informal leaders are not given enough of an incentive and not enough time to really take on the role of the leader? Well, I can't draw any conclusions yet about this, and this will need to be further researched, but I'm sure that it's an interesting point if corporate environments want to implement leadership models they found in World of Warcraft in their own business. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Questions? Go again? Yeah. Oh, we have one prepared? A question already? Okay, go ahead. You're closer. I'll get to you in a second.
Okay, my name is Joost Hazens. A short question. Thanks you both for your wonderful presentations. A short question for the both of you. My first question concerns the fact, what is it actually that people who play World of Warcraft are learning? Is a game such as World of Warcraft a good or not so good a preparation for real life or a business career, concerning the gender issue, for example? And one could argue that the game is a good preparation because you learn, as a woman or a man, how to deal with the same kind of prejudices as in real life. You refer to the prejudice, the way male and female avatars are represented. But do players learn to be critical, for example, towards these kinds of prejudice when they play the game? And then it could be something positive. Or could one argue that the game is not so good a preparation because the game confirms the wrong kinds of gender stereotypes?
Well, I think for the females, it becomes very clear what the problems are for choosing a female character, because I think they can relate to all the prejudices that are. And because I found on all the forums that from males who have a female character, they were very enthusiastic about it. Oh, I get all this free stuff, and it's great being a female, everybody's helping me, but I don't see the negative side. And I did choose this research because there was a lot of talk about creating a virtual world that could train leadership. And I think it's important to have people being aware of that representation is a very important fact when you are doing such things. So, but I do think that in some ways it can teach you something, but I'm not sure if people really pick it up.
But isn't it also, just to sort of comment on that, isn't it also the fact that you were able to have a male character and then look inside that skin? Doesn't that give you then the other perspective that you're kind of asking for?
It does now because I have both. Because I do have a female and a male, and I try to keep them as equal as can be. Okay. So I keep everything the same. I react the same way, and so I can see the difference. But I'm not sure. It's only one case. So. It's
sort of like a permanent experiment or something like that for you.
Well, no. I think about choosing one and continuing with it, but not two.
We'll get to him.
Okay.
Hi, time again. Excuse me, I'm a really fanatical World of Warcraft player, so I couldn't help notice some mistakes, but I also have some useful questions. For one, the groups sell between 1 and 5 persons, and rates can go up to 40. And
there is another experienced player who just said this week it were 25. So sorry.
For some dungeons, yes. On the gender, sorry. You mentioned that females have a lot more sexual things. Well, I sort of concur, because you showed the dance of the Night Elf, which is an imitation of Lolita from Odyssey, and that's one sexual dance of the females. Now, actually, the gnome male has a spanking dance, and human male dance has a thrusting dance, so to speak.
It's a Michael Jackson dance, but it's more...
No, Michael Jackson is from Night Elf male. But
oh, sorry.
But just to point out that the male's characters have, in my opinion, a sort of equal or in some way balanced way of expressing the sexuality. In this instance, the dances.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, I do agree that, as I said, both are stereotypes, both the males and the females. But in this case, the stereotypes for the males are less or are more appropriate for leadership positions. And I read a lot on forums and the blogs, and everybody is talking about the female Night Elf dance. So it must have some effect. Nobody's talking about the gnome dance. So I think the female dance makes a lot more impression.
You should see a lot of naked gnome dancing around the game.
No, thank you.
But you did mention that you're on a low level. Now, don't you expect, which is in my opinion the case, that when you reach the higher levels, people become more mature, literally more mature, and they do accept females as leaders?
Well, I don't think they get more mature, but I do think that they look a lot more at skills, because there are millions of players with a 15, 20 level character. And when you hit the 70 level, there are a lot less, and people tend to look a lot more which skills does someone have. Armor is much more important, so I think on a higher level, it kind of disappears, the difference.
Okay, yeah, I have a lot more questions, but I'll go in private.
You can discuss it afterwards, the subtle details of the different dances. Who was first?
I was just going to say in response to the first question that it's very difficult to put any kind of blame on World of Warcraft. I mean, you can ask, is it causing people to behave like this because of the stereotypes, or is it just reflecting what's in the stereotypes that, for better or worse, well, for worse, I think, these stereotypes exist in real life, you know. I mean, I see them. I'm in the computer science department, so. No. Anyway, so I'm just saying that I don't think you can really blame World of Warcraft for being, say, misogynistic or something, in so much as it's the people who play it. You know, it's not.
But you know, I don't blame World of Warcraft, and it is the normal representation of females. But what I do find interesting is that Blizzard doesn't see this as something that is strange, because they don't mention it, but it has an effect, so why don't they mention it? And that it's the same for a lot of other games and media, true, but does it make it right?
Okay, another question?
I think I really wanted to ask this question the last time when you presented, and I'm lucky that I'm getting the chance to ask this now. One thing because we had a little animation assignment to do, part of a course on the previous period, and me and my friend, we came up with an animation of a robot. And it was basically a rigged model where we could control the various joints of the robot. And we really wanted to make it a she robot. And the reason why I'm correlating this with my question is that I personally feel it's human to be appealed to the opposite sex in general, okay? And that keeping that generality in account, part of your research program, have you looked into the animators and the game designers of World of Warcraft? How many men and how many women are there?
Well, no, I didn't look at that, but I assume it's more men.
Wouldn't that actually stereotype? Yeah, but wouldn't that actually contradict many of the points that you suggested?
Why?
Because you're looking from the level of the players who are playing the World of Warcraft, but your point of view is not from the people who have designed the avatars in the World of Warcraft. And if you look at it that way, then probably there'll be far more justifications on what you thought were monstrous from the men's side than the women's side.
Well, I think for the designers, I think they just design what they think is beautiful and what they think is nice. But I think they do have to take into consideration how it comes across to the players. And I think they just took over all the stereotypes that already exist without giving any consideration that maybe it could be done in another way. And I think the fact that gender isn't mentioned in gameplay, they say, well, gender doesn't make any difference for the gameplay. It only differs in appearance, animation, and speed. And I think that's not true. I think it does matter for your gameplay if you have a female or a male avatar, at least on with a lower level character. So that's where I think that they're wrong. If they want to make half-naked, big-boobed women, that's fine. But they should have in their game guides, well, if you take this avatar, be ready for this. Because they do say it when you choose a hunter or a mage or an orc or a gnome. So why not for gender?
So it's just a question of honesty, really. That's what you're...
Well, it's more that it's an overlooked topic.
Okay, this is a question for Pauline. What is it that you mean with that World of Warcraft is just a game? And I'm asking you because you're giving the example of a leader quitting his job, and you ask if this could be the result of the fact that World of Warcraft is just a game. And then it would be difficult to learn something from World of Warcraft as you describe it. So my question, do you consider the fact that World of Warcraft is just a game? Is that a limitation for learning something in real life, or is it, on the contrary, a safe place, for example, to experiment because it is just a game?
Yeah, well, the thing about World of Warcraft being just a game, I think me and my colleagues, we have discussed with people in our surroundings that we have to focus on leadership in World of Warcraft, and people are reacting like, yeah, it's just a game. And I think that most of the players start playing World of Warcraft because it's a game, it's entertainment, it's fun, and I do not think that this is necessarily a limitation for learning from World of Warcraft, and because it's because it's fun and you are enjoying it. It goes maybe you don't notice really at first what you can learn from it, but yeah. What was the second half? What the other thing you said?
No, you can
either which it, whether it was yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I'm not sure. It's really hard for me to tell whether people are starting to play World of Warcraft as a place for experimentation. When it comes to leadership, I don't know. Maybe from now on, because of it's being like a topic discussed, people will. But I can't say anything about whether it was also before leadership in games was an issue. I really can't tell.
Okay, I think maybe one more question, if there's a short one. No, it's okay. It's important and short? Okay. It's important though, right?
Hi, this is about the gender issue. I wonder, of course, have you also tried to play a female character with a male player? Because isn't that...
No, I'm not a male, so...
No, but how can you then make the distinction between attitude and appearance? Because you are a female and you act in a female way. I don't try to make this sound stereotyped, but I think... Doesn't that play a part as well?
Well, I try to catch that, but because I'm also a female behind the male avatar. So if there's a difference on how the male is treated and the female is treated, with the same person behind it, the appearance or the representation makes a difference. And that was what I was looking at, how the representation of someone makes a difference on how he can play the game or be a leader. So that's what I did.
Can I add something? I think you've always been also been focusing on instrumental play only, and that makes it already that your own personality, your being a woman, is not quite as clear as when you're, for example, role-playing or being really social with other characters. And also, if it was really important that she was a woman in a male body in a game, then like the other players would have also run and helped her, like when she was having trouble with slaughtering some animal, but they reacted to her like really like she was a male and not as a female.
Okay, thank you very much. A lot of controversy, very interesting. Much appreciated.